Hi everybody, it's Julie, and today I'm playing with Craftaboard. And Craftaboard is kind of the unsung hero out there in the paper crafting world. It's a lot like chipboard, but it doesn't have a craft core, it has a white core. And it is less dense and it's more fibrous and lighter weight than traditional chipboard is. And the great thing about it is that it compresses enough that you can die cut it with your low profile dies. So that's one of the fun and interesting things that we're going to talk about today. And one thing that I like to do is to just layer it with pattern paper. So I die cut this shape. It's a cloud shape with the word thanks already built into it. This is by Memory Box. It's such a fun die. I really like it. And I also die cut it from some gold foil paper by Chickanitty. And I'm going to go ahead and apply some glue in a very thin layer and then just glue that gold foil paper right over the top. Now you may wonder why I didn't layer the papers together and then die cut it. And that's because Craftaboard is just thick enough that you can die cut it with your low profile die, but if you add another layer of paper, you're not going to be able to cut cleanly all the way through. So another thing I wanted to try was embossing it, and it embosses beautifully in your embossing folders. And I'm using a really tight pattern here because of the end result I wanted to get. So I used a linear folder that has a narrow stripe, and I wanted to white emboss just the raised portions of that. Now you can apply versamark to the inside of your embossing folder and emboss it that way, but it's going to ink the debossed areas instead of the raised areas. So I wanted to get this approach, so I'm going to apply the versamark directly to that raised image. And then I'm going to take my brush. I had a few stray embossing powder marks that got where I didn't want them, so I just went ahead and cleaned that up with a little paintbrush. And this is why you want a really tight pattern if you want to emboss the raised portion of the design. And then I'm just going to heat that up. And as you can see, the Craftaboard can take the heat. You can handle it. And then I wanted to cover it with some ink. So I'm using Distress ink. Now normally, I don't know that I would use a water-based dye ink over the top of this directly, but because it wasn't hitting all the surface of the paper and I could apply that Distress ink really quickly, it didn't peel the surface of the paper, and then I'm just buffing off any ink that's sitting on the emboss lines. And there you can see I've got a great chipboard type embellishment with texture and a fun pattern on it and lots of color. Now, the next thing I wanted to try was painting on Craftaboard. And I do know from past experience that really wet mediums are just going to peel the surface of that Craftaboard. So what I'm going to do now is apply a layer of gesso. I'm just going to coat this die cut flower. This is a Savvy Stamp flower. And as you can see, it's got the fun little detail work there in the center. And then I'm going to paint it with some Distress ink. So I let the gesso dry, and you can heat set it real quick with your heat gun if you need to, if you're in a hurry. And then I'm going to speed up this process, but I took the Distress paints in various colors that I wanted to give this some pop. But you'll notice that the Distress ink can get mopped up off the surface, and that gesso is acting as a primer, and it's preventing that wet paint from deteriorating the surface of the Craftaboard. So that's really a fun way to treat your chipboard embellishments. And I could see having all kinds of fun with this. You could, do all kinds of things in your scrapbooks and stuff like that. I thought it was really fun. It almost looked watercolor the way it sits there on the surface until it permanently dries. So I could manipulate that Distress paint for quite a while until it dried. And now I'm going to try to layer two pieces together to get an extra thick piece of chipboard style embellishment. So I kept one die. This is a Hello die by Avery Allen. I love hellos, and I can never seem to stop collecting hello dies and hello stamps. But anyway, this is a fun new one for me. And I double cut it, and then I'm going to put some glue stick over the top. And the great thing about this particular glue stick is it's not going to be too wet, but it does allow you some room to manipulate before it starts to dry and set up. You have the room to play around with it and get perfect placement. And I just ran that glue stick across the top of the one that was inset in the negative, because then I wouldn't get glue all over the place. It was just going on the word hello. So now I've got the second hello that I've put over the top and made sure that they're all lined up pretty well, and let it dry for a while and then go ahead and pop it out. Though you do want to be careful though that you're not letting it dry so much that it's stuck there in the negative and you can't get it out. Ask me how I know. So now I'm going to take my alcohol markers. These are Copic markers. And I wanted to create a kind of a fun multicolored effect. And the great thing about Copic markers is you can tint the crafter board so easily with your Copic markers, but it's not going to pill the surface of the paper. So I can go over and over and over this with my alcohol markers, and it's not going to ruin the surface of that crafter board. So here I am just using some really fun, bright colors, just kind of blending those to create kind of a rainbow effect of color. And I'm using the brush nib. You could use the chisel nib if you want, but I'm finding that the brush nib works just fine. And just adding color here and there and blending it out until I get the effect I want. And then I'm going to take some glossy accents when I'm all done coloring and go over the top of it. Now I'm applying a really thick coat, so it's going to take some time to dry, but the end is so worth it, the end result. And you want to make sure you don't shake your bottle so that you avoid the air bubbles. But if you do get any in the surface, just drag them out with a pin. But there you can see how luscious and thick and glazed the effect is when it's dry. And another thing you can try is to die cut a shape from the crafter board, and then also from some of those awesome glitter sheets by Cosmo Cricut. And I just love this because it's a really neat no-mess glitter technique. And it's got self-adhesive stuff on the back. And so I'm just going to peel away the liner and sandwich the two together. And then I'm going to apply a thick layer of the glossy accents over the top. And when it's dry, it's going to go on cloudy, and it's going to take quite a while to dry, probably overnight. But then you'll have this really neat finished effect. And another way you could do this would be to just tap it if you're in a hurry. Tap it with your versamark or your embossing pad, and then apply the ultra thick clear embossing enamel over the top, and then repeat that process several times in order to get a really thick, high raised emboss effect. But this was with the glossy accents, and I let it dry overnight, and it turned out so cool. I hope this gave you some fun ideas for using crafter board. Be sure to stop by the classroom blog so you can see the finished projects in greater detail, and thanks for watching.